Ah yes, protein, a magical word, isn't it? I bet you just from me saying that word, you probably thought of gains, or you thought of fat loss, or you thought of some ripped D's guy, or maybe that's just because you were looking at me. Either way, we're gonna talk about protein today because this is still a very common question that I get, but it's also a very important topic. And in this video, I'm gonna cover a wide spectrum of different circumstances and individuals. So that way, once you leave this video, I want you to know exactly how much protein you need so you can go and run with it going forward, and so that you can leave me alone about it finally. What's good, YouTube? It's your boy John Mango here representing Beyond the Iron. We're looking to take your fitness and your nutrition further so you may, just maybe, might, perhaps, change your life forever if you decide to take this advice and roll with it. I know a lot of you out there don't, but the ones that do, you're gonna prosper in your fitness and health goals, okay? That being said, if you're new to the channel, then I want you to know that the type of content that I'm bringing to this channel is all fitness related, nutrition, meal plans, tips, tricks, strategies, everything in between. So if you enjoy that stuff and you feel like that's something you're interested in, then consider subscribing to my channel. That being said, we're gonna dive into this content. We're talking about exactly how much protein you should be eating in order to maximize your goal. Again, fitness related, so it's gonna be build muscle or lose fat, okay? Lose fat, lose weight. We're gonna cover different current circumstances and different goals, exactly how much protein you need for all of them. Now, keep in mind, this is not some bro science bullshit. This is straight facts based off the latest research that I found myself, and I'm gonna go ahead and link the studies down below at the bottom of the description. And these are real studies, by the way, they're not blog posts, because for some reason in 2018, people think that blog posts are considered studies because they actually say the word study in them. That being said, I want you guys to reference those studies. I'm gonna be referencing them myself, and we can make sure that you know exactly how much protein you need to get to your goal. So basic stuff that I'm gonna cover here is different circumstances, such as how much protein somebody needs to actually just maintain healthy bodily function and repair and recovery, because ultimately that's what protein's primary function is in the body. It is for building and repairing more than just muscle tissue, but it also has other purposes. Of course, it can also be used as energy, for example, and we're gonna dive a little bit more into that in a bit. So first things first, I want to talk about the circumstances. Either you're just doing it for maintenance of good health and again, recovery, and basically its main purpose. But to be honest, I obviously don't recommend most people just sit around and try to maintain ever, unless of course you kind of have no choice due to a limitation. But again, that may just be an excuse. Before the haters start flying out at me, hear me out. I'm just saying, most of us should be moving towards a fitness goal, whether it's build muscle or lose fat, because ultimately better body composition is gonna lead to a healthier, better, happier life. That being said, protein is still an extremely vital, actually, component to that. Let's go ahead and dive in. First things first, before you could ever find out how much protein you need to maintain, the thing is that you should know how many, or at least roughly how many calories you need to maintain your body weight, okay? The reason for this is because typically protein is recommended as a percentage of your total calories consumed, meaning a percentage of the total energy you're consuming should go to protein. That percentage is roughly 20 to 30%, okay? That's a very general guideline, I know, but I can't get much more specific with that until I'm getting exact individual details based on lifestyle, body weight, goals, and genetics too. So that being said, at least 20% of your energy should come from protein. However, more than 30%, again, this is just for people maintaining, sitting around, is not necessary to get the amount of protein required for daily function. Now that we got that bullshit out of the way, because at the end of the day, like I said, we should always be striving towards a fitness goal to better our lives. This is the reason why I made this channel. So let's go into the two main goals when it comes to improving your life significantly, which is based off body composition. We're talking about fat loss and we're talking about muscle gain. Everybody wants to look better. How do you do it? They want to tone. What does tone mean? It means gain muscle, because the more muscle you have, the better you're gonna look, naturally at least. And fat loss, because the leaner you are to a certain extent, and naturally the better you're gonna look. Let's talk about fat loss first. Again, the studies are going to be linked down below. Higher protein diets when it comes to cutting has been shown in several studies across the board to actually reap greater benefits when it comes to fat loss. However, it's not necessarily directed or linked to a better body composition as opposed to a lower protein intake. The difference here is that protein, one of the other bonuses that protein provides is that it's actually going to help fill you up, okay? This is a thing that I mention often. Protein's a huge factor when it comes to satiety. What that means is how satisfied you are with your diet. When you eat a chocolate bar, that's gonna go very quick and you'll find that you're not very satisfied, hence you can eat so much more after that. This leads to our obesity issues of today. But when you have lots of protein, for example, eating lots of meat, or obviously if you're vegetarian, eating vegan sources of protein, whether it's lentils, beans, although they have carbs mixed in them, the protein is ultimately what's going to bring the satisfaction levels up, meaning you can have a little bit less of that food and be more satisfied. So it's a win-win having a higher protein diet versus a lower protein diet when you're in a caloric deficit, meaning when you're trying to lose fat. So I hope that made a little bit of sense. For these individuals looking to lose fat for that reason, protein will act as a potential energy source. Since your body is in a caloric deficit, this means that you're burning more energy than you're intaking. So as a backup reserve, protein is there just in case it needs to be used as energy. And this is another reason why it's a very good idea to increase slightly how much protein you're intaking when you're in a fat loss phase versus when you're in a surplus or trying to gain muscle, which is typically a surplus. What are the actual numbers, John? What's taking you so long, man? Well, for one, I want the watch time. I'm just playing, kind of. Am I playing? Anyways, check it out. I want to get to the numbers right now. So if you're in a deficit, you're losing fat, your protein should be roughly 1.1 grams to 1.3 grams per pound of body weight. Now, for all my non-Americans out there, like myself, the Canadians, and everybody else in the world, that's gonna be 2.3 to 2.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. So again, this is not necessarily a must. You can get away with less protein, but being in a deficit, being that your protein stores in your body, aka your muscle mass, is at a bit higher risk than if you were in a caloric surplus, it is recommended to just slightly bump it up. I typically recommend 1.1 grams per pound of body weight when it comes to anybody that's looking to shed fat. Again, this is gonna make sure that you're preserving the muscle, granted that you're doing this in conjunction with a resistance training program that's effective and that works for you. Now remember that satiety factor that I mentioned previously? This comes even more in handy when you're in a deficit, because in a deficit, the chances are you're not gonna feel satisfied throughout the day, so the higher you can have your protein, the more satisfied you're gonna be. I'll give you an example. People that follow ketogenic diets, which by the way, I despise them. One good thing about the ketogenic diet is that satiety is higher at first. So even though they're in a deficit, their body doesn't actually feel so much like it's in a deficit because protein and fat, which are a lot more satisfactory and satiety levels are higher than carbs, they are so high that it almost confuses the body into thinking that it's not starving and it feels very full and satisfied. Eventually it's gonna catch up, and keto doesn't really work long term for most people. So you can stick to your regular carbs and just cut the calories down, but bump the protein up a little bit in exchange for some of those carbs, okay? All right, so maybe your goal is to build muscle. Now, one thing is that you can build muscle and lose fat at the same time if and only if you're in a very rare situation of either being a complete beginner in the gym or coming off of a long time injury where you've got some muscle memory and you're ready to pack on that size as you recomposition your body, or you were just sick. Basically any long period of time off from the gym and from weights, you are able to actually build a little bit of muscle and lose fat at the same time. In this case, you are still considered to be in a fat loss phase. You can technically get away with less protein, but I would keep it roughly the same. Now, if you're trying to build muscle the way most people have to, which is in a caloric surplus, this goes for 99% of you out there, by the way. When you're in a caloric surplus, obviously that means there's a surplus of energy. There is more energy than the body actually requires on a day-to-day basis. Now, logically speaking, this means that protein does not have to be as high since it's at less risk of being used as energy. Actually, if you have your carbs right and everything perfect, it is essentially at no risk of being used for energy, okay? So that being said, it would be better to cut the protein down slightly. Actually, the number would be somewhere between 0.8 grams to 1 gram per pound of body weight. So in kilograms, that's gonna be roughly 1.8 to 2.3 grams per kilogram of body mass, okay? So as you see, it's obviously a little bit lower in the bulking and in the surplus state because since the carbs are so high, you don't have to worry about using protein for anything other than its primary function and for building muscle. So you still wanna make sure that you're having that roughly 1 gram per pound of body weight intake because that's gonna actually make up for the muscle breakdown that you're getting in the gym if, again, your workout program is effective. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty straightforward, guys. It's a shorter video today, which is a good thing, but check it out. I want to mention a few things, so I guess it's going to be a longer video, as it always is. A few things is, if you're a little bit confused and you don't know which range you should fall into, typically somebody that's lighter would go with the lower end of protein. Whereas somebody that's heavier, let's say if you're 200 pounds versus somebody who's 180 pounds and you're looking to cut, obviously I would go with more protein for the larger individuals since their metabolism is generally higher, and again, they're gonna require more calories, okay? So again, to meet that certain percentage, which by the way, for cutting, the percentage is roughly around 40%, but this could differ, which I'll get to in a second. To meet that, the larger individuals usually go on the higher end of that range that I've given for the last two examples. And the lighter, smaller individuals would lean more towards the lower end. Now, if you're really confused about all this, it really breaks down to something that I preach all the time on the channel, on my Instagram, everywhere. And that is simply being safe and getting roughly 1 gram per pound of body weight or 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, okay? 2.2 grams, whatever you wanna say. Roughly that amount is going to make sure that you're safe with the protein, all right? Now, if for whatever reason you notice significant muscle loss in a fat loss phase, chances are, one, you're in too much of a deficit. By the way, if you don't understand how many calories or how to calculate them, I suggest you click right here and that'll take you to a video I made based off how you can figure that out. But you should not be risking muscle mass by going with 1 gram per pound of body weight. It keeps things very simple. And again, you need to figure out your calories before you figure out the protein. Now, something that I want to cover at the end here that you may be wondering is, what if you are a very overweight individual or a obese individual, okay? Because obviously that could be the majority of the people watching this. Well, I've got something for you as well, okay? Now, here's the deal. If you weigh 300 pounds, it is not ideal to make it 300 or more grams of protein because that would be 1 gram or more per pound of body weight. That's gonna set your calories most likely too high. What happens is, as a very overweight individual, one, you can get away with more of a caloric deficit than somebody who is leaner than you, okay? So that's one thing to keep in mind. So what I would do, and what is recommended, is instead take those recommendations that I gave you for protein. So if you're cutting fat and you're 300 pounds, instead, I want you to aim for 1 gram per pound of body weight for your ideal body weight. Okay, so if you're 300 pounds and you want to be 185 pounds, that is how much protein I recommend that you get instead of the 300 grams. That way, you can keep carbs up a little bit higher, and ultimately, a little bit higher carbs will lead to you sparing more protein, but also the most important factor, it's gonna lead to you most likely sticking to your program the most. So that being said, if you're overweight and that is your goal weight, that's gonna fluctuate a little more as your calories are not gonna be proportionately much higher for a 300-pound individual as it would be for someone like myself who's 200 pounds but extremely active, okay? Something to keep in mind, guys. I hope that made sense, and I hope that now you can leave this video knowing exactly how much protein you need going forward, whether it's fat loss, muscle gain, maintenance, fat loss, muscle gain, and just gains in general, okay? Give you some general guidelines. And again, I hope you found this video helpful. I hope it found you well, and I hope you're enjoying your day as you watch this video. If you made it this far in the video, I really appreciate you watching. I hope that you'll toss a like down below if you enjoyed the video. If you didn't, hit the dislike button, up to you. And share it with your friends that constantly maybe wonder what the answer to this question is. Definitely comment any questions or concerns below. And last but not least, don't forget to subscribe, because I'm here, John Mango, representing Beyond the Iron, where I'm looking to take your fitness and your nutrition further, so you may, and if you listen, you will change your life forever. That's it, everyone. I'll see you in that next video. I'm out.